us, musicians, music venues, everybody involved in the industry, talk to each other, promote each other, support each other. That's what Houston has always meant to me, and KPFT is pretty much the radio embodiment of what I think the Houston music community is. We would be lost without them. So hope you keep listening, donate, support. You'll hear us sometime soon.
I sit here alone and I wonder why. Friday night and everyone's moving. I can feel the heat, but it's soothing, heading down. I search for the beat in this steady town. Downtown, the young ones are going. Downtown, the young ones are growing. We're the kids in America.
We're the kids in America. Well,
yes, we are.
Welcome to Growing Up in America on KPFT Pacifica Radio. Bob Sanborn here from Children at Risk, along with co-host Lauren Biegel. Lauren,
That's
how are
me.
you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Hey, I've been gone for a couple
I know,
weeks.
it's been a while.
Yeah, but it's exciting to be back here live.
They've been calling in begging for you.
Yeah, I know they have.
Yeah.
The one person, my mom was.
Yes, Jenny was calling.
My daughter.
Yes.
Yeah,
she was saying, where's Dad? Bring him back on the radio.
Yeah, wow. Well, it's good to be back. And we have a great show today. So welcome to Growing Up in America. Today on the show, and this our public policy show where we do a discussion on children, public policy, and how do we as a city and community do when it comes to taking care of all of our kids. Andrew Hairston's on the show today, Lauren.
He is.
And he's the Education Justice Project Coordinator over at Texas Appleseed in Austin. And they always seem to be on top of a lot of good issues.
Yeah, I mean, Texas Appleseed are the go-to people for quite a few things.
Yeah,
so I'm
we're
excited to
have
bring
Andrew.
them on.
Andrew's sister used to work at Children at Risk, by the way, Dixie.
Oh,
yeah. So
how cool is
I'll
that?
make sure to talk to Andrew a little bit about that. Gulshan Rahman is on the show. She's the Assistant Director of Compliance and Family Services, talking about COVID's impact on early education.
That ought to be. We have quite a few bills and some things moving there, so I think that'll be a good context for some of our big things moving this week.
Megan Green will be joining us. She's the Director of Prevention and Early Intervention Services over at DePelchin. So we're excited to have her with us. And then everyone's favorite segment, what is fast becoming everyone's favorite segment, is Gen Z. Gen Z Talk with Becky. And Becky's here in the studio with us. And Becky, you have some really good slang for us a little bit later in the program, is that right?
Yeah, you'll be very much satisfied. You'll learn everyone will hate me in the office, I'll say that.
Because I will learn these words and I'll use them constantly.
Yes, I have gotten complaints. I went from being everyone's favorite coworker to being the least.
Least favorite.
I will proudly admit to being someone who filed one of the complaints, at least one, from last time. So I'm excited to see what you're
Becky
signing
slays,
us up for.
But she
time.
slays when
my
she
God.
does this, so it's just...
Yeah, I love it.
Yes.
Becky, this is not very on fleek of you.
the on fleek is passed. I'm sorry to say this, Lauren. But,
I was hoping you would catch that as a test, and that was good.
Yeah. But I think Becky comes with a strong word game, so I'm really excited about that. So.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So anyway, welcome to Growing Up in America, and we'll continue with some good segments. Thumbs up, thumbs down today is going to be good. And as always, we're brought to you by Children at Risk, right? The voice of Texas's children. It's a nonprofit organization dedicated to research, public policy, law, and collaborative action on behalf of Texas's youth. Yesterday, Lauren, I was in a press conference with Sheila Jackson Lee, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, talking about House Bill 30, a federal bill that is going to ban this idea of grooming and trafficking on school grounds and other after-school programs. So it was we had a group of people. I would love at some point in the future of the show to bring some of the great advocates in the fight against trafficking here in Houston back to the show. I know we've had many of them on, but it was a powerful press conference. And there are things going on around us here in Houston that I think are important to and noteworthy, right, for us to focus in. So it's one of the things we do, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, very good. You want to start us off with a little bit of thumbs up, thumbs down? We have a little bit of thumbs up, thumbs down music. I love the thumbs up, thumbs down music.
Dime cómo hacemos. Si tú me deseas, yo a ti también. Hace rato te quiero comer. Di que vas a hacer.
Thumbs up, thumbs down music is just here to keep your Spanish sharp, Dr. Bob.
Claro que sí. Yesterday at this press conference, by the way, no one spoke Spanish, and so I went out alguna palabra para la prensa española, la prensa
Siempre
latino.
con una palabra.
Una palabra para
Siempre
la
con
prensa.
una palabra.
Siempre
A ver.
tengo. Okay,
Thumbs
very
up,
good.
thumbs down in English. Standardized tests. As I feel like I know my opinion on this is a little torn between me as someone who works at an organization that relies on data and me as someone who wants students and schools to succeed. I feel like sometimes
Well, those are
it
not
feels
necessarily
like
mutually exclusive.
they don't have
are
to
they?
be,
Yeah.
but I think the topic of standardized tests is where they can feel a little more at odds. What do you think?
Here's what I think. I think that when you're measuring, when you're being accountable, the cheapest way to do it is standardized tests.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever you do something that's the cheapest way to do it, not always great, right?
Sure.
And so I think, I remember being shocked when I moved back to Texas, and my daughter was in the 5th grade, and she came home and she basically said, "Today we learned how to take a test." And I'm like,
Great. That's awesome.
This is
Yeah.
not what education is supposed to be about. And I think in many ways, and you and I have visited schools, in many ways this is what's happening. There's a lot of, let's get ready for the tests. It's all about the test. And I think that's not the proper way. So I think if you look at it through that lens, standardized testing could be a bust. However, at the same time, we want to know how our schools are doing. And if we're going to do it the cheapest way, it's standardized tests. But wouldn't it be great if we could figure out a better way to do it?
Yeah, or I think when I think about it, it's not even. I think there are issues with the way we standardize tests. Yes, I was talking to actually one of our A+ coaches about it, and he was bringing up, I forgot the term, but it's basically like, for example, students who don't speak English fluently are getting dinged not just in reading, but also in math, because the math problems are word problems, and also in, all the other categories, because we know they don't speak English as well or fluently because
Those
they
tests
failed
used
the
to be
reading
available
test.
in Spanish.
Right.
But because our
so-
state and all its wisdom
right.
is like, oh no, it needs to be in English.
Right. So we have those issues with the test, but I think also the bigger issue, because I think testing is important. At some point, we have to know how the kids
Accountability
are
is
doing.
important.
Right. Accountability is important. Checking in, knowing are students learning what we think we're teaching them. That is important. I think for me, a big issue is how important those test scores are. Because I would hope that my, having a job in the case of our teachers, my ability to progress in my career for our students was not judged on one day out of the year.
Right.
And so I think we can do testing and take that data and use it, but we don't have to make it the basis for teachers continuing to work in the school. Kids, that be the 100% thing that decides if they move on. I think we make it so high stakes that also creates the problem. If it didn't, I went to private school, so we took standardized tests, and I'm sure, had I bombed every single one of my tests, they would have probably brought in my parents and had a conversation.
Did you guys do the Iowa basic test? Was that the one that you guys did?
It was the ERB. I don't know what test that is.
Yeah.
But, it tested all the STAR things,
Sure.
reading, math, whatever. But
your
I never
curriculum
heard
wasn't
about
built-
that score ever again.
Yeah.
We sat down for ERB week. We took them for half the day. We moved on. Again, I'm sure if I'd bombed all of them and demonstrated I couldn't read, we would have done something. But, it was a relatively low stakes situation. We weren't prepping for it. I wasn't practicing bubbling answers. It was just, we want to take this test. We check in on how you're doing. Here is the report. And then we might go from there. And I feel like that's a better model.
So thumbs up, thumbs down
I am thumbs down
on testing.
I feel like it's always
Are you thumbs down on
context.
accountability?
I'm thumbs up on having tests. I'm thumbs down in how we currently use those tests.
Wow, very good. I'm thumbs up on accountability, but I can tell you that the system, we use these tests designed by Pearson, and so Pearson pays a lot of money to the state, and it's almost like if you go back to the Iowa Basic or some of the tests that used to be given so the teachers would have a tool to determine where the learning needed to be directed.
Right.
Very different than the way this high stakes testing that we have today. So yes to accountability. Let's figure out a better system.
Agreed.
Very good. You're listening to Growing Up in America on KPFT Pacifica Radio. Here we go.
You flip the script for the hell of it. Addicted to betrayal, but you're relevant. You're terrified to look down.
Quintanilla is in the room. She is our slang Gen Z slang expert. Becky Quintanilla, staff member superior at Children at Risk. So, Becky, how did you become an expert on Gen Z slang? I guess you're Gen Z.
Yeah, I think I would contribute to the year I was born. Yeah, I think that plays in a big part. I also want to clarify, I do have a real job at Children at Risk. I am a project coordinator. I'm not just
You
a
are?
Gen Z. Yes.
Yeah,
Today
yeah,
we
yeah.
learned.
Yeah, just in case y'all didn't know.
I've just been sending
I
Becky
knew
my
this.
tweets and asking her to make them sound cooler.
I gotta.
So it
I have
sounds
to
like-
build my LinkedIn somewhere.
Yeah.
So
Well, my
Could you
Twitter
help,
account.
Could you help with my social media as well, Becky? Would that be...
you know what? I think we also have someone that's in charge of social media.
Okay, very good. All right, what's our first word today?
So first word today is Riz.
Oh, man. I feel like I've seen that on TikTok, you know?
You have. I'm going to I'm not going to help you, Dr. Bob, but I am going to laugh as you try to figure this out.
Yeah,
Because I
I'll
know what
figure
this
it.
means.
Yeah.
And Lauren never let an opportunity to laugh at me slip by. That's for
Never.
sure. I don't know. I can't remember what Riz is. Is it
Well, I'll give you a hint. It's like a way to describe
someone?
something, I guess.
Something.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
I-
an abbreviation of
I-
another word also.
I will give an
use it in
example
a
of someone
sentence?
who
Yeah.
has Riz.
Okay.
So Pete Davidson
Yeah.
has Riz, as
True.
seen with many beautiful girlfriends.
Very successful women.
Successful women. So, and you look at him and you're confused and you wonder what it is.
It's
Riz.
So sort of like a certain attitude, a certain...
Yeah.
Yeah.
You-
I think it's game.
game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it used to be game.
Yeah.
Now it's switching
now it's
to
Riz, which
Okay.
I believe is short for charisma.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that's where it comes
Riz.
from. Yeah.
Interesting. So I never knew about the short for charisma. So that's very good. So a little Riz, right? So who on the team at Children at Risk has a little Riz? Pretty much no one.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know enough about.
Is it only for guys?
I was
or
going to
can
say,
women
I
have
feel
guy-
like one, at least currently, I'd say a newer word, and it's used pretty. I mean, in the same way, I don't think it was as common to say like a woman has game. It was mostly men, which like we can dissect that.
So like
maybe.
Rico has Riz or,
I-
the on the board, right? Rico, yeah. Going
Be.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Looking over, I could see it.
Okay. Very
I think
good.
he's going to turn off your mic. If you
Yeah, I think he tried to turn off my mic. I think that's.
I
what
hear
was
we
going on.
have Ellen Sanborn calling in next to report. Did Dr. Bob ever have Riz?
Did he
We'll
ever?
find out.
That's a good
I
question.
I'm shocked to
that's
hear
good.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
Next one is eras, which is not really
Say that again.
era or eras.
Eras, like time eras. Like this is your era.
That's exactly what it means. But used in a slang version, you just use it to describe something. So an example is, we've used this at the office. Our social media is in its pink era.
A pink era. What is that?
We just started using pink a little bit
It's
more.
like to describe like a hobby or what you're doing. So like I'm in my dog mom era or my dog sports era
Okay.
because right now that's like a lot of what I'm doing.
Oh, right.
I'm in my like Austin girl era because I'm
Okay.
about to move.
So I'm like in my activist era.
Sure. Or you were just in your Europe era.
I was
Yeah.
just in Europe era.
Yeah,
like
you were in
my
your
Portuguese era.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I feel like it's mostly to describe like short-term
Yeah.
stuff.
Okay.
So,
Short term. Okay.
It's like I'm doing this now, and I'm not saying I'm going to commit to it forever.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know if I'm going to do dog sports forever, live in Austin forever, but like right now, that's a big part of what I'm up to.
All right. Eras. Very good. Very good. So get a little Riz for a new era in your life. Yeah.
You're in your Riz era.
yeah, there you go.
Actually, we probably shouldn't say that.
No, don't
I
say
think
that.
that's a good
No,
thing.
no,
Yeah.
no.
LME
All right.
is calling now. Next one we have, it's giving.
Giving.
Yeah,
Giving.
It's
Yeah.
giving.
Oh, it's giving.
it's giving.
It's giving. So it's like it's a benefit to you. It's a giving.
More to society, I would say.
Oh.
Yeah, like it. Are you familiar with it's like serving looks? Okay, we'll
You
find
guys,
another
you
synonym.
guys, this is like Gen Z trying to teach,
Yeah.
yeah,
Are you familiar with if something is slaying?
yeah, sure.
Okay, so giving, I would say, is similar to slaying.
Oh,
Like,
someone, okay,
that look is giving. It slays.
okay.
It also can be used to compare something. So
Someone who has a lot of Riz is giving.
I would
depends.
say if you have a lot of Riz, you probably can like get a date with a woman who's giving.
Okay.
Like if you have Riz,
Perfect
you're
way to
showing me a
describe it,
picture
Lauren.
and I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, she's giving.
Okay. All right.
It also can be compared
Got
to
it going
something,
on.
Yeah.
Someone has it going on.
Yeah,
Is
there you
giving.
go.
Okay.
Sometimes you can say it's giving 2012.
True.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
good,
that's a
right?
good comparison.
So it's giving 1990.
Yeah, or like if someone
Exactly.
shows you something that like is ugly, you can be like, it's giving sewer rat.
So like when I was in college, a lot of the women I dated were like giving 1960s, even though it was not the 1960s.
Yeah, it was like what, the
hippie girls.
1930s?
I like Dr. Bob. This is really confusing.
Dr. Bob, we don't know what year we went to college, but we assume it was World War One.
So that one's
very
fun.
funny. Very funny guys. Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Go on.
My job is on the line, guys.
Yeah, no.
The next one is similar.
Yeah.
I'm going to use it with the girl.
This is our last one, I'm guessing.
Second, but yeah. Never mind. I take back the one I'm going to do.
Okay.
Ick.
What is it?
Ick.
Ick. I hate it. It's not so good.
You got
Ick.
it.
Ick is like, oh man. If there are a number of icks about a person, things that you don't like about them, right?
It doesn't have to be about a person.
Or about anything.
Yeah.
I'd say I use it mostly in the context. I say this one is mostly used by women to describe weird things that
About
men
guys,
do
yeah.
that aren't like inherently gross. Okay, like I hate when men wear flip-flops.
Ick.
So if I were dating a guy and he came out in like true thong flip-flops and I saw his toes, that would give me the ick.
Yeah.
But I know other people don't feel that way.
I've seen
And
some of
it's-
the chats. You talked about
Yes.
that, and
Yes.
one of the staff members said she hated when people were in like tank tops or ripped
Yes,
tank tops.
exactly. So it's like
Ick.
something that, and it's not just like I don't like it. It's like I can no longer be interested in that person because it's been cursed. Like I saw this thing and I can't unsee it. Like I saw them in thong flip flops. I can't unsee that.
I have
Okay.
an example of that, but it happened a little too late into the relationship. So it happened
Yes.
a year into the relationship. I couldn't.
Oh no.
Was that the end of the relationship?
No, I'm still with him.
Oh.
But,
It wasn't that
I
big
hope
of
he
an ick.
listens.
it's very
It
close.
wasn't that big.
It's pouring milk before the cereal. Lauren, do you do that?
No, I don't. That is an ick though. That's
Yeah.
horrible.
I see nothing wrong with. I don't do
my-
that. I don't do that. But I don't know how that
That
could be
gives
a
you
big ick. You know, it's just like
it just gives me the chills.
you don't
Yeah, you're
like
just
that.
like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't-
You
the
guys are
heebie-jeebies.
sensitive. Very good.
Well, but there are
Yeah.
other things that wouldn't give me the ick that Dr. Bob might give you the ick.
Yeah, it
Can
could
you
be.
think of something that might give you the ick?
I'm not playing. So
Ellen's already on the phone.
Ellen's got it turned all the way up. She paused
yeah,
whatever
I
she
feel
was
like
doing.
I busted it out when I went with eras. You know, or giving.
Yes.
Yeah, that was it for me. So very good.
Right.
Becky Quintanilla.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Gen Z.
Thanks, Becky.
Thanks, Becky. All right. Hey, that was a good little segment.
That was good.
I always love the slang segment from Gen Z, right?
You learn so much.
I learn so much, and I will promptly forget most of it.
Yeah.
But those that I do remember, I'll use like more
That
than
was
I
like
should.
when you learned the up arrows.
Yeah. Yeah. The little mountains.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. What are those officially called? Up arrows?
Up arrows,
Okay,
yeah.
very good. Hey, on the line with us is Andrew Hairston. He's the Education Justice Project Coordinator with Texas Appleseed. Andrew, it's been a long time. How you been doing, man?
Hey, y'all. That was a really fun segment. I enjoyed listening.
Did you learn anything, Andrew? I want to know.
I did. I very much so did. I'm 31, so I think I'm a millennial, but I just took some notes, and I think I'm up to date on the Gen Z slang.
Very good. Now, Andrew, do you have a sister?
I do, yeah. I have a 26-year-old sister. Yeah, we're very close.
Is that Dixie? Is that her name?
Dixie? No.
Okay. See, I knew another Andrew Hairston who had a sister who worked at Children at Risk. Yeah, I get it, Andrew. I get what you're saying. Yeah, very good. What's your sister's name, Andrew?
Angela.
Angela. Okay, very
Yeah.
good. Very good.
Angela Hairston of Oklahoma.
Yeah, very good. Hey, tell me, Andrew, what's going on in terms of education justice right now? What's one of the big things going on at Texas Appleseed with school safety?
It's been a whirlwind, Dr. Bob. So we published a report in late March called School Safety and Threat Assessments, Assessing the Student Beyond the Threat. We're really pushing the legislature to analyze bills that it passed in years previous to this one, rather than propose more draconian bills and pass them. I think we've generally done a good job with the many conflagrations that have been ablaze this session, but we'll see when it's done after Memorial Day just how effective we were. I'm going to the Senate Education Committee tomorrow to testify for HB 473, which shores up parental rights in the threat assessment process.
Yep.
We think that's good to have more parental engagement in that regard and to bring them in as partners as districts are conducting these teams and comprising them and pulling them together. But, yeah, it's just been a lot.
Tell me, Andrew, I mean, we get reports every week from Jason Sabo and Mandy Kimball, who are up there in Austin, and it's just it just seems wild and discouraging sometimes. I mean, we get our pieces of legislation that we pass, but the overall theme seems to be a little much, huh, Andrew?
Yeah, very much so. So we're almost a year removed from Uvalde, right?
Yeah.
That is commemorated with the gravity that it needs to be, right, on May 24th. But I think very swiftly over the past 11 and a half months, the legislature moved away from the root causes of that day, right, that young man had not felt that he was in a safe and supportive school environment throughout his K-12 education, that the school police officers were ineffective in preventing the tragedy. And they largely started pointing to things like his truant conduct some years past, right, and these kind of red herrings that just were not related to the reason that he shot up Robb Elementary. So I think that has very much so contextualized this session, right, that there was an opportunity for both chambers of the legislature to meaningfully address some of the root causes of school safety issues and the lingering detrimental impact of the pandemic, but the legislature largely punted on bringing forth meaningful change for young Texans across the state.
Do you think, Andrew, that we've done a good job in terms of letting people know the reality of what's going on in the legislative session, or do you think that sort of the right wing has sort of dominated the conversation across the state, where that's what most people are hearing, and they're not hearing the things that you and I are talking about?
I've been blown away at the civic engagement this session, Dr. Bob, right? I'll funnel it through the March for Trans Lives that occurred a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if folks were tuned into Twitter and other forms of media yesterday, they saw some pretty horrifying images of peaceful protesters being detained and brutalized by the police. So I think there might be traditional media narratives, right, that folks aren't as plugged in, or that a lot of these things are moving forward without public input. But what I'm seeing, physically when I'm there at the building and then seeing on Twitter and other forms of media, is that folks are absolutely fired up and lifting up their voices against injustice and oppression, and are pushing legislators to actually act in ways that would be beneficial to Texans and to human life more broadly. But it's just a long game that we're engaged in, right?
And it's almost like you can't have enough of this dialogue that we're talking about, right? It's just, it's just ridiculous.
And part of it, as we realize as we've been drawn to this work at Children at Risk or Texas Appleseed, that some of these fights will succeed our lifetimes, right?
Yeah.
We'll be fighting this, we'll retire from our roles, we'll pass away, and there will be another generation to come to fight for truly safe and supportive school environments, and for young people to have academic environments where they can thrive. But you just have to know that you're in that long arc of history and that you're fighting in your time as best as you can.
Yeah, Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are these, as you said, red herring issues that were being labeled as school safety, which, on the one hand, I think we're all playing defense against a lot of that, whether it's the crazy, one door, armed guards at the door stuff, or even the critical race stuff. But I'd love to hear, when when Texas Appleseed is talking about school safety, like, what are y'all focusing on? What to you would make schools safe? What is that asking for beyond these crazy ideas coming out of the Capitol?
Yeah, so we very much so focus on prophylactic and preventative measures, right, that you have to build up these safe and supportive school environments on the front end, right, and invest in early childhood education, and for the earliest learners among us to have these robust environments where they feel like they can thrive socially and emotionally. And I often opine that the difficulty with this is that if you've invested in a truly nurturing environment, is that you're just not going to see a news story that an 18-year-old person shot up a school, right? That the kids will just grow up and feel completely, enmeshed in their school environment and feel like as they grow up and start working that they are a part of their community and that they will live a meaningful and fulfilled 100-year life, right, in whatever way that means for them. And so we try to talk about that at the legislature. I think tomorrow will probably be the last time I offer testimony in the AEA session, but I might sound like a broken record, right? One, it's that the pandemic occurred, right? We can't divorce any kind of analysis of schoolyard fights or disruptive behavior that might be occurring right now from the idea that the pandemic did occur. And then two, that if you build up these really supportive school environments with the counselors, psychologists, and social workers who have the expertise in child development, then you will significantly reduce the likelihood that incidents of mass violence will occur on school campuses. And you'll just see the kids, again, grow up and just feel like they can be fundamental parts of their community.
Andrew, I wanted to ask you one last question before we have to go with our time. What is the impact? I know that we've worked on CRT right across the state, and what's going to be the negative impact of all this, anti-CRT work that's happening at the state legislature? I mean, what are some of the things we're starting to see across the state?
Yeah, so I think during the session, and because of capacity, right, I couldn't weigh in on all the education issues that I wanted to this session. But one bill that kind of came to mind was HB 900 and its censorship of LGBTQ material, right? And so I think that is very much so a continuation of what occurred in the regular session of 2021 and the three special sessions, that you can't talk about, critical race theory just stands in for racism, right?
Yeah.
And so let's move it forward and talk about any social justice topics, right? You can't talk about racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, these very real material oppressive systems for folks. And I'm not sure of the status of HB 900, for example, but it very much so is a continuation this session of the idea that we're going to censor your access to information, right? Censor the topics that you can discuss in your classroom, and ultimately put forth this revisionist history of America that's just not true, right?
And sometimes we celebrate when this stuff doesn't pass, but what's happening is that it numbs us, right? And session after session, so that when something does pass, we think, well, it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but indeed it's bad, right? And it's
bad.
And it's...
Well, and then that moves the goalpost. So when the standard has become a little bit worse, suddenly the status quo we were hoping to maintain is the worst thing, when we're fighting against the really, really bad thing. So over time, like, we say we're chipping away, and at the same time, there's being, like, chipped up. Like, by piece, it goes both ways.
Yeah.
It just sucks.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Go ahead.
No, go on, Andrew.
Well, I'll shout out my therapist in my last few minutes. We spoke on Monday, and he was like, Andrew, I just want you to, like, hold that you're dealing with a lot of vicarious trauma, right? Because me as a black lawyer, I feel very privileged to do this work and to be able to go to the legislature and engage in these conversations. But I'm also hearing from, younger black folks, right, maybe in their early 20s or mid-20s, who are talking about the very pernicious ways in which systems failed them, right? How they might have gone through foster care or had to deal with forms of abuse when they were younger. And so not only are you moving the goalposts, but it is exhausting to go to that building and just have to contend with conversations of basic human dignity, right?
Yeah.
Where you're just fighting for human beings to be afforded dignity to live their lives in the ways that they want to. So yeah,
Yeah, it's something else, but you know what? We keep up the good fight, and things, you know, when we look at election margins, we see them getting thinner and thinner, and we also know that if there are large portions of the state that aren't voting, if they started voting, it would be a whole new game for us, Andrew, and that's the long game we're fighting for, right? So it's.
I'm here for the foreseeable future. I'll be a Texan, and I'll be fighting alongside y'all.
Andrew Hairston is over at Texas Appleseed. Andrew, thanks for the great work that you and everyone of the team there at Texas Appleseed is doing. Thanks for being on Growing Up in America today.
Likewise to both of you. Thank you for having me.
All righty, take
good
care.
one.
You're listening to Growing Up in America, KPFT.
Still the one I need. I will always be with you. Oh, you got me all alone. Don't ever let me go. Say you're real loud if you fly. If you leave me, you out of your mind. We dress into the he picked me up. We made me feel so.
All right, a little countdown there. Gotta love the little countdown, don't you, Lauren?
If it's Beyonce, I gotta love it. Simple as that.
You just gotta love Beyonce. I was on doing a little winery tour. Sounds very bougie, doesn't it?
It does.
In Portugal, in the Douro Valley, and the driver loved American music.
Yeah.
But when we put on Beyonce, he was like, "Is this American?" You know,
It's because she's not. She's international.
yeah.
She's universal. There are aliens bumping Beyonce. You heard it here first.
Hey, on the line with us is Christine Thomas. She's with our Center for Social Measurement and Evaluation at Children at Risk, and date of the day. Christine, hey, how you been doing, Christine?
I'm great. It's good to hear you on the radio, Dr. Bob.
Oh, yeah. I love being on the radio. It's more fun when Lauren's with me, right? So I love having
Much
Lauren.
like anything else.
Yeah, exactly. When it's the Beagle, we're all set. Hey, Christine, what's the number of the day today?
We didn't preview our number. This is
We
the
didn't.
first reveal of the number.
Oh, yeah. What is the number, Christine?
Yeah, I'll say it right here. So it's 2,100 per 1. So I'm just gonna put it out there because there's a lot to talk about. So for every 2,100 people in Hidalgo County, there's only one physician. And, you know, if we look across the health profession, it continues to get worse. So for every 3,600 people, there's only one dentist. For every 1,500 patients seeking mental health care, there's only one mental health professional available. So Hidalgo County is one of many in Texas that have this health professional shortage area, and it's considered medically underserved.
So Hidalgo County is down in the Rio Grande Valley. It is Hidalgo County is like McAllen, right around there. So it's not the Brownsville, but it's the next county up as you go west in the valley. And when we look at that area, it's not exactly rural, right? I mean, it's sort of it has a suburban feel about it. It's populated. But what are the ramifications of that, Christine, when you have so few health professionals for a population that is largely living in poverty?
Yeah, so I also want to preference that there's 131 counties in Texas that actually are experiencing this shortage. So it's not, not just for region. We wanted to highlight this area, but in general, we see that more patients will experience delays in access to primary care, which is a critical component to improving our health of our communities and reducing overall healthcare costs.
I was just at a meeting. Right before this meeting, I was over at Episcopal Health Charities, and we were talking about the shortage of physicians, but not only that, the shortages of physicians, of Latino physicians, and how medical schools here in the state of Texas, where you have 54% of our children are Latino in our schools, we still have very few Latino physicians. And when you go into a community, whether it's Hidalgo County or any other county, along the border, or many other counties in Texas, predominantly Latino, you still don't see as many physicians as we probably need to see. And we're not even talking about a shortage of Latino physicians here right now. We're talking about just physicians, period, Christine.
Yeah, it's actually not just happening in Texas. This is a nationwide crisis, and this is something that's been actually predicted even before the pandemic occurred. So, there was a lot of burnout from the pandemic, and again, this shortage which was already present. We see strains on emergency departments, which were also battered by the pandemic. So it's just really persistent barriers to care. Access is a big one. But people won't see a physician until it becomes so critical that they have to go to the emergency room.
Well, and I think that something that maybe we don't always contextualize access to healthcare as a touch point for so many other things. Like a few months ago, Texas released the report on maternal morbidity and mortality. And it's like, well, where does that become relevant? Oh, wait, like building a relationship with a physician, with a doctor throughout pregnancy, receiving prenatal care, and then actually having a care team that you trust. And if doctors are seen for every one doctor over 2,000 people, immediate recipe for all kinds of horrible outcomes and disasters. Or health and nutrition. Where are parents supposed to get that information if they see their pediatrician once a year at most for 7 minutes? That's not, I think we underestimate sometimes how important having a relationship with a care team can be to building habits that impact so many other things. And so it's so disappointing, especially along the border where the healthcare needs and systems are very unique compared to other parts of the state.
As we move out of this segment, Christine, one of the things that we need to mention is that if Texas, as one of 10 states that hasn't expanded Medicaid, would do, if we did this expansion, we'd have lots of federal money flowing into the state so that rural hospitals could stay open, physicians could be in our state and not worry about a population that can't afford to pay, and we wouldn't have these high levels of uninsured patients like we have in Harris County, right here in Houston. It's one of the things, and not to mention mental health, which would be funded. There's a world of trouble that could be taken care of by simple expansion of federal dollars. Hey, Christine Thomas, thank you very much for being on the program, the Growing Up in America, with us, and thanks for all the great work you do, Christine.
Thanks. Bye.
All right.
The stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas. The prairie sky is wide and high, deep in the heart of Texas.
All right.
Is that one of your favorite songs, Lauren? You'd love that song.
As a born and raised Texan, I believe I have to say yes.
Yeah. And when you go to the Astros games, you participate.
The seventh inning. Yeah, obviously I do.
Yeah.
All
Very
right.
good. Gulshan Rahman is on the phone with us. She's the Assistant Director of Compliance and Family Services.
Yeah, for Harris County Department of Education over at their Head Start. Gulshan, how are you?
Good afternoon. How are y'all doing?
Very good.
Good.
Gulshan, I know you want to talk a little bit about COVID's impact on the early childhood education workforce. Talk to us a little bit about that, and what are we seeing today that we weren't seeing maybe right before the pandemic?
Okay. Well, I think as it's the lunch hour, I'd like to give everyone a little bit of food for thought, and that is
Nice.
the importance that we place on our child care staff. So the things that you've been talking about earlier today in your calls are some of the similar themes here with the child care workforce. So, for example, shortages.
Yeah.
We're seeing shortages right now, and some of those things are a result of what we've gone through during the pandemic. As educators, we place a lot of importance on our students and families, because without our students and families, we don't have a program. But we need to remember that also without our staff, we don't have programming either. If we don't have enough teachers and we don't have enough child care workers, then we can't educate our children. And without question, what we know is that the first 5 years of life are so important for learning. That's what lays the future, the foundation for the future of children. So if you think about the power that our staff have in shaping the future, that just makes it that much more important for us to think about what they're going through. So how families and children experience the stress and the trauma and difficulties of COVID, our staff experienced that too, but they had to bear that burden and come to work and be present for children and families. So you're seeing the burnout and the turnover in our workforce that you are seeing in other places.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Gulshan, we talk all the time at Children at Risk, especially post-COVID, but even long before COVID, the margins and the kind of business model of being a child care provider is not very well. It's not it's not great. No one's going into childcare to become a millionaire or anywhere close. So I'd love to hear, not necessarily just on the financial side, but what the providers that you're working with and talking to, what would they need, from us, from Texas, to make this a more sustainable industry for them, and to not have it be such a burden to just be present and keep, because I know like so many of them really love what they do, but it's just not making sense in the system we've designed.
Yes, as you say, I don't think anybody would tell you that you go into childcare, you don't go into daycare, you don't go into Head Start. It's not a money-making business. You do it for the passion that you have for education and the passion that you have for children and families. The biggest thing that's going to make a difference is if we're able to support them with more competitive salaries so that they can keep up with the cost of living. I believe we have a statistic that shows us that just over half of childcare workers qualify for at least one form of public assistance.
Wow.
And if you talk to early childcare workers, Head Start teachers, you will find that many of them have more than one job so that they can keep up with their own situation. So I think that increasing salary is going to be the most impactful thing that we can do for folks.
Yeah, I know that a lot of providers were able to increase their salaries, at least temporarily, due to the federal aid that was coming down. But we all know that is running up at the end of this year. What are you expecting to see as providers lose that federal aid, and what are y'all doing to potentially, hopefully, cushion that kind of cliff that they're facing?
So I think we'll continue to see some of the difficulties with the end of that aid. But I'm fortunate to work for Harris County Department of Education, where we have a lot of support for our Head Start program and ways to increase the pay of our teaching staff. We did get a cost of living adjustment from the federal government to try and make our salaries more competitive with school district personnel, but we're also doing other things that are non-monetary incentives to try and help people. So, for example, we've worked in a couple of mental wellness days throughout the school year. We're going to try and do one in the fall and one in the spring, and that's just, it really is a break. Take a day and go take care of yourself, no students. And then we have a program-wide initiative, a wellness initiative that we call Head Start Wellness. And those are little things like a step challenge, or we're doing a hydration challenge. We got Head Start water bottles, distributed those, and did a challenge for how much water or a beverage you could drink to keep hydrated. So just little things to improve morale, things to show appreciation, because again, our staff were experiencing the same difficulty and challenges as our families, but it wasn't acknowledged in the same way. So we really want people to know how much we appreciate the work that they do.
Gulshan, I want to ask you one last question before we go, and that is, do you feel like there's enough public awareness around this crisis around early education and its impact on the economic development of our state? I mean, do people who don't have kids that are of early childhood age, that need early education, that need childcare, do people understand what on the how on the edge, on the precipice we are here in terms of economic development and the impact of not being able to have these childcare centers in our community?
I truly don't think that people understand, because if you put a small investment in early childhood, the return is so great later on. So you can intervene, middle of life, later in life, but it doesn't yield the same result as when you're working in those foundational years of 0 to 5.
Yeah. Wow, very good. Gulshan Rahman is over at the Harris County Department of Education. She's the Assistant Director of Compliance and Family Services. Gulshan, thank you so much for being on the Growing Up in America program, and thank you for all the work you and your team do.
Thank you.
All righty.
Have a good one.
You're listening to Growing Up in America on KPFT. All right, let's go over across town to the DePelchin Center and DePelchin Children's Center. Megan Green is with us. She's the Director of Prevention and Early Intervention Services. We want to talk a little bit about fatherhood involvement. Megan, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you all doing?
Very, very good. Thanks for being on the Growing Up in America show. Hey, Megan, give us an idea around dad's involvement, fatherhood involvement. What's going on right now, and why is it so important for dads to be involved beyond what we might sort of already know?
Yeah, so a lot of really great research has come out just over the last several years about the importance and the effect of father involvement on kids. And one of the biggest things that's come out is the importance of, for boys who have involved dads, they're less likely to have behavior problems, and girls who have involved dads are less likely to have psychological problems. So those are two big important things. And, you know, we also know that co-parenting, or what we like to say is shared parenting, really makes a difference on reducing mom's parenting stress. So helping moms out, whether that couple is together in a relationship or not, having that dad support those kids can really make a difference on that family.
What's the percentage? You know, I had this amazing relationship with my daughter, but part of it is because mom was commuting, right, to different cities during early parts of the childhood. And she has this great relationship now with both of us. And I wonder, what is the percentage of girls and boys that have these great relationships with their dads? Because it seems like more often than not, there's not that close relationship.
Yeah, you know, actually, I think the most recent U.S. Census Bureau put out a report that like 1 in 4 children live without a biological or step or adoptive father in the home.
Wow.
So it's a pretty scary statistic. But we also know, and something that we here do at DePelchin is that we know that we're not necessarily engaging fathers in the right way, that there's actually a lot of fathers out there who really want to have a good relationship with their kids. And we want to involve them and encourage that participation more. We want to help boost their confidence, help them feel that they have everything it takes to play with their kids, provide for their kids. And so programs that we have help teach fathers ways that they can do that.
And I love that idea, right? That there are dads that want to be engaged. They just need to know how to be engaged. And I love some of the research that shows, that dads are the ones who are going to push a little higher on the swing, right? They're going to push their kids a little bit. What mom might say, that's a little dangerous, but sometimes kids need sort of a little bit more, right? And dads can provide that.
Yes, and actually, with you saying that, there was some interesting data that came out that said things that only dads do, or mostly dads do, like wrestling, rolling around on the floor. There's actually some biological benefits to that. That could go back to just, animalistic things, from that we see in the animal world.
That's a dad, yeah.
Yeah, but there's actually a lot of benefits to children having that physical contact with their father. We've seen that brain development looks better in those kids, that they do better in school. So it's funny, that correlation, but it's real. The piggyback rides, those types of things are important.
Yeah. Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is also interesting, especially as we, I feel like a lot of, I'm going to assume, a lot of the reasoning for why maybe dads haven't been involved came from, the more traditional society where generally dads were working and moms were home all the time. But now, as women are more overwhelmingly also working, they're also sticking with, the full family responsibilities. And I'd love to hear a little bit, more in depth, I guess, on kind of where you mentioned, these dads want to, but they don't know, like, what skills are they thinking they don't have? Where are we going wrong in, like, raising boys to become fathers who feel empowered and the value of being involved with their kids?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we have noticed is looking around in our environment, are we engaging and inviting fathers? Are we using language that shows the importance of them being there? So, for example, one of the things we realized in our programs was we would engage with mom because she was the one contacting us for services, but we failed to ask the right questions. Well, hey, is there a dad at home? Can he participate? How can we include him? Our marketing materials, do they show enough images of fathers? Do we ask the right questions of how they can be involved. And then I think using terms like shared parenting is important, because no matter what the weight looks like, we need both parents to be involved for that child to be really just fully successful. It's very important that both are involved. And we talk about things that are helpful that we know fathers really that help them do well. And one of those things is asking him to do something, giving him a task. So if we have parents who are co-parenting, who are maybe not together, or they are together, ask Dad, hey, can you pack the lunches during the week? Or, hey, Dad, could you help do their hair in the morning? Giving very specific things so that Dad's prepared, he knows what to do, he feels confident, and those are things he can take ownership of.
Yeah.
And I think we hear from our moms a lot that they just kind of do those things. And we ask, well, do you ever ask Dad to do them, or do you ever assign something to him? And it really helps Dad feel empowered to take over those things by asking.
We talked earlier in the program about the fastest growing part of our population, the youngest part of our population, which is Latino in the state of Texas. What are the cultural differences that you find in dealing with Latino men and Latino dads? Because historically the Latino family is very close, but the dad plays a different role, right? When we talk about Latinos visiting schools and parent engagement, it looks very different than maybe parent engagement does for whites and blacks. Talk a little bit about Latino dads and the differences there, Megan.
Yes, so we definitely see differences, and sometimes we hear from our moms that they are afraid to ask Dad to help participate more in the parenting because of how they might feel judged by other family members, because they know that there's an expectation that Mom should be able to take care of everything. And so we really try to work with, if we can work with both parents, it's even better to say, hey, we can destigmatize these things, and while still respecting culture, it's just about looking at how Mom plays a very important part in that kid's life, and so does Dad, and they're both very different. And so if a family understands the differences of how just Dad involvement can really benefit that child's reading ability, benefit their overall brain development, benefit them, not being less likely to get into substance abuse later on, then we can understand why helping Dad even maybe have a choice in what he participates in the family. And hey, we're not taking away from any one person's role, but we're just saying there's a place there for him.
Wow.
And we're seeing younger generations of Latino families change that mindset, that we're seeing a shift in that because younger fathers tend to want to be more involved for some reason. There's been a shift in that culture.
Yeah. Lauren, you have a great relationship with your dad, right?
I do.
What is that? Why do you think that is?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I feel like a lot of it has to do with this idea of there were things that he did, for most of my life, he was, out of the house working while my mom worked some, but still was working from home or more flex hours. But he did bedtime reading. That was, always his job. Or, there were certain things as I got older that, we would go. He hunts, and so we'd go out to where he would hunt, and he would, we'd do all that and have those fun outdoor weekends, or we'd go to Austin for a UT football game. And so he there were carved out
little bonding
things.
opportunities.
Yeah, bonding opportunities but they were regular. It wasn't one off. We'd go do this. It was I knew that in the fall a couple of times we'd go to Austin for a weekend, and you're driving there and you're chatting in the car, and so I think having those spaces that were out my and his space separate from what I might do with my mom, those were the things that really built.
I think those continuous things rather than the one-offs, right? I think are important.
And my mom wasn't involved. I think it was big. It was his thing that he liked, and he invited me into that, and I think that was big.
You ready for our final 5 questions with Megan?
I am. The hardest questions of the show.
This is very tough, Megan. These are tough questions. Lightning round, fun 5. First off, Megan, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I thought I wanted to be a teacher.
Ah.
Yes.
I'd say I landed pretty close.
Yeah, it's pretty close. Very good.
Speaking of bedtime reading, what was your favorite book to either have read to you or to read yourself as a child?
Oh, I would have to say probably anything by Dr. Seuss.
Oh, wow.
I was Dr.
I read those
Seuss
over and
for
over.
Famous Person's Day.
My daughter's favorite was Wacky Wednesday by Dr. Seuss, and I would always intervene. I would put different words in there, like her best friends and stuff like that. Hey, when they make the Megan Green story in Hollywood, Megan, who's going to play you?
Oh, my goodness. I guess the first person that comes to mind is Reese Witherspoon for some reason.
Great choice. Great choice.
Well, see, now I have a new picture of you, right?
Yeah.
Reese Witherspoon. Very good.
All right. It's been a long week. It's a rainy day. What comfort movie are you unwinding with?
Oh, I would say something like Steel Magnolias or something funny, comedy, just to get a laugh out of me.
All right, last question.
Last question. I want to know, what was your favorite food growing up as a kid?
Favorite food growing up as a kid? I loved ice cream. I would say that was always a fun treat in the summer and something we always had as a staple around the house.
Wow, ice cream. Do you have a favorite ice cream?
Good question.
Favorite ice cream? I don't really eat ice cream anymore, but if I did, I would say chocolate chip cookie dough.
Chocolate chip. What's your favorite, Lauren?
Mint chocolate chip.
Wow.
What's yours?
I've been eating this Jenny's ice cream, this brown butter almond brittle. Holy
you
cow.
You would have a bougie favorite ice cream. Chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry aren't enough for this guy. He's got to get chocolate, brittle, caramel,
Megan
truffle.
Green, our fatherhood expert. Megan, we need to get you back on the program because this was fantastic. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing over at DePelchin, and look forward to seeing you soon. Say hi to all your team for us, okay?
We will. Thank you for having me.
All righty.
Thanks so much.
Have a good one.
Very good. I like having the music in the background, by the way.
Yeah, that was fun. It was ambiance.
Ambiance music. Very good. So I just love this whole idea, though, talking about fatherhood and dads. And it's something we probably don't talk about enough, right? In general, as sort of children's experts like we are, Lauren.
And we kind of got into this. I think the way your average household looks has evolved really fast in the last decades. And it's time for our parenting advice and our kind of idea of what is normal to, I think, catch up.
Yeah.
And whether that's, two parents or community or what it is, I just think we need to start talking more outwardly about how important it is to have safe adults at home and involved adults.
Very good. Hey, were you at that motherhood summit that was 2 weeks ago? Were you able
I was in part of it, yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty good. What's the next big summit that we have going on at Children's? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, it's our early education summit.
Next week.
Fitting, with what we just talked about with Gulshan. I'm going to guess because Kim Cochran's involved. We're going to talk about ECE workforce. We're going to talk about building a more sustainable infrastructure and just how important it is. As she said, it's 85% of brain development in the first 3 years. So before public pre-K, in that 0 to 3 space, especially, but all through up until kindergarten.
And
what are we doing?
I think next week we also have our Children at Risk School food rankings, seeing how school districts across the state are doing in terms of using the U.S. Department of Agriculture money available to them to feed our children. So we'll be talking about that. Hey, that's it for us here at Growing Up in America. For Lauren Biegel, I'm Bob Sanborn. We'll see you next time on Growing Up America. We do this each and every week
for children.
See you next time.
LAX with a dream, my cardigan. Welcome to the land of fame excess. Am I gonna fit in? Jumped in the cab, here I am for the first time. Look to my right and I see the Hollywood sign. This is all so crazy. Everybody seems so famous. My tummy's turning and I'm feeling kinda homesick. Too much pressure and I'm nervous. That's when the taxi man turned on the radio and a Jay-Z song was on. And the Jay-Z song was on. And the Jay-Z song was on. So I put my hands up to play my song. The butterflies fly away. Nodding my head like yeah. Moving my hips like yeah. Got my hands up to play my song. You know I'm gonna be okay. Yeah. It's a party in the USA. Yeah. It's a party in the USA. Get to the club in my taxi cab. Everybody's looking at me now. Like, who's that chick that's rockin' kicks? She gotta be from out of town. So hard with my girls on her